Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Very Hempy podcast series here from Transition Town of Greater Media. We're coming to you live from Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania, in conjunction with Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. They've given us some money in form of a grant to, pretty much bring some awareness and some education out there to all the different things that the hemp plant can and will be for, the future of our planet. I am joined today with Cameron McIntosh of Americhanvre, and it's a HempCrete company, correct? I had the opportunity to go to a HempCrete workshop over the weekend run by All Together Now and Americhanvre, and we got a chance to build a whole bunch of panels that are going to be used for a store for a person in Philadelphia. But it was really an amazing event. I got to learn a lot, about what HempCrete is and what the possibilities are. And we were so excited that, we asked Cameron to come on and do a podcast with us to, share a little bit of this with everybody. So welcome, Cameron.
Thanks, Dave.
To see you.
Yeah, man. Cheers.
It was a great weekend. So, tell me a little bit about yourself and what Americhanvre is all about.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the introduction and for having me here, Dave. And also for coming to the workshop last weekend. Really special group of people came out. So still dealing with a little bit of the chaos down there. But we're moving those panels up and out of the way and getting the backing off so they can start drying out. So yeah, really, really great project last weekend with All Together Now. Panels will be donated to Krista at Farmer John to become her corner store CSA, to be known as Corner John, affectionately.
Nice. Love that Philly accent.
That's right. Yeah.
And if you don't know what that is, JAWN.
Yes,
John.
yes, not a John. Yeah. Anyway, my name is Cameron. I own Americhanvre Cast Hemp. We've been focusing on HempCrete now since 2018. It wasn't until January of 2019 that I quit my job full time to focus on this. And although I've had a relationship with the plant in the past, this was not part of my income. I was not in the advocacy realm or anything along those lines. So sort of saw the 2018 Farm Bill as a checkered flag moment for the industry, and in particular the fiber industrial side of the plant. We can see how saturated the cannabinoid side has become, whether you're talking about CBD or THC or any of the other cannabinoid varieties. But we wanted to find a way to work with the plant and work with the opportunities that were coming that we saw, again, on that fiber industrial side. So when I started my company, I joined forces with a group in Blandon, Pennsylvania called Coexist. Friends of mine, Drew and Anna, husband and wife team. Anna's an architect. Drew is a high-end film and television editor.
I've met Anna. She's been a guest on one of our things before.
She's nice. Yes. Yeah. So good friends of mine. And we joined together to create the Hemp House on Wheels, which is a mobile demonstration unit.
The Hemp House on Wheels.
That's
what
right.
Is this?
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I usually bring it down for the workshops, but it lives at Drew and Anna's place in Blandon. But basically, it was a model hemp home on a trailer.
Like a tiny house.
It looks like that's the reason why I didn't use tiny houses, because it looks a lot like a tiny house, looks an awful lot like a tiny house, but doesn't have the gray water and the black water and the plumbing and all of that. So essentially what we did was created a wood frame on an old flat deck trailer. We packed the HempCrete, put plaster on the walls. Anna did a really striking design to kind of show off the fact that HempCrete can be very architectural. And then we actually debuted it at the Cannabis World Congress and Business Expo in New York at the Javits Center in May of 2019. So I quit my job in January, and very quickly Drew had this idea about doing the Hemp House on Wheels and said, hey, wouldn't this be a great thing to do for us to start our businesses? Drew and Anna, by the way, their business Coexist. They make a precast HempCrete block, amongst many other things. Including a Traveler. It's called a Traveler. It's a small building kit for an ADU that they've been marketing, and they've actually been published in Dwell magazine. So really cool. But again, focusing on taking HempCrete out of the spotlight of it being hemp and putting it into the spotlight of traditional building, architecture, engineering, design, things like that. So anyway, that was our first project. And that, along with my involvement with some of the early organizations that were starting around hemp building, in particular the U.S. Hemp Building Association. I was a board member early on for that group. So, and then all together now as well. So we very quickly found others in the space that were interested. Of course, at that time, there was a lot of fervor around CBD, especially that year, 2019. So we were kind of out of place at that show. At the CWCB Expo. It was a cannabis show in a state where cannabis was not yet legal in 2019 in New York. Right. So it was all CBD packaging, processing, labeling, distribution. I mean, you name it, they had it CBD wise. And I remember people coming back and saying, hey, I left yesterday kind of bummed out and heard that you guys were here and wanted to come back and see your booth, because we were literally at that point really the only thing that had anything to do with fiber. And that was, we were there as the guests of the National Hemp Association at the time, who was working with Canopy Growth. So we were sandwiched in between. There was a Canopy Growth booth. Yes. Yeah. Big Canopy Growth booth, National Hemp Association on the other side with the only other fiber industrial exhibit of any kind. And then we were in the middle, the Hemp House on Wheels, in this like way over designed booth space. But it's pretty crazy at that point. And what I found in my career, just to wrap up your first question here, Dave, that people are very interested in what we're doing, and very quickly if they have any sort of opinion about the material, because you start off and they understand it's made out of hemp, very quickly they realize that it's not a gimmick. We don't do it just because it's hemp. There's several aspects to using the material that really do make it superior, and we'll get into all of that. But anyway, so I run the company Americhanvre with my wife in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We are essentially an insulation subcontractor, traveling insulation subcontractor that focuses specifically on building with hemp and hempcrete. We also supply materials and trainings, and also the eReezy spray application equipment package. We're the U.S. distributor for that machine, which is what I do the majority of my work with. So again, we're just up in Allentown. If anybody's interested, always stay in touch with Transition Town. All together now, great resources here.
Absolutely. And, we'll hopefully get some of the websites to crawl along the bottom of the, podcast here as well. Yep. So, we will be able to get you, your website. So if anybody has any questions on this material, I mean, Cameron is definitely the foremost name in the industry, especially here in Pennsylvania. Kind of a one-man band, right? There's not a whole lot of competition out there, right? But there are people. I'm on Facebook a lot and social media. I see people all over the world building with this stuff, and
right.
So why would we want to build with hempcrete? So tell me more about why hempcrete.
I'll try to do it succinctly. There's several aspects. The first and one of the most important, I think, that people need to understand is material health, and making a decision to use a material to build your home with that is natural, plant-based, very, very organic, if you will, and unlike most of our modern traditional building materials, contemporary building materials like drywall, plywood, pink insulation, paint, primer, all the things that go into building a house are toxic to some extent. If you were to walk into a hardware store and every material in there had the same label that the food has on the grocery store telling you all of the ingredients, you wouldn't want a slice of OSB plywood anywhere near your house, anywhere near your build, anywhere near your life. So interior air quality, the health of your building materials is what I believe will be, in our lifetimes, recognized properly as a modern health crisis. So that's definitely top of the list for me. Beyond that, you have superior performance with a hempcrete wall system. For several reasons, you do get superior thermal performance. So lower cost of ownership, which is really important. Some of the original money that was let out by the Department of Ag here in Pennsylvania for promotion of hemp went to one of the projects we did in the Pittsburgh area, Newcastle, Pennsylvania, where we were retrofitting a blighted home with hempcrete and other healthy materials that would then be given to someone in a low income situation, and it's now occupied. So that's done.
Awesome. That's awesome.
But what the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture was keen to prove there was, number one, a new crop for farmers, but also number two, that these materials actually were more affordable to own and operate a home built out of these materials, right? So
long-term costs.
Right? So
it's a little more expensive in the beginning.
It's certainly more expensive in the beginning. A lot of that has to do with the import costs. 40 or more % of your cost of your project could just be shipping fees, which is very depressing to think about.
Depressing.
But again, you do see anywhere from a 30 to 60% reduction in your heating and cooling costs over the life of your ownership of the home. So think about in terms of a typical 30-year mortgage, and we don't have good data yet to back this up. Excuse me. It begins with a comparative build like what Matt did, where you have one house built identically to a HempCrete house right next to it in the same spot geographically, and you take measurements. So that work is being done, but we do know that it does have superior performance. So how many years into a 30-year mortgage will HempCrete have paid you back, and how many years will you be earning money from that decision? So framing that along with the health of the material is important, and many of our clients understand that. It's a bit of a, you could call it a loss leader or something like that, but I like to think about it the same way we do organic food. At one point, organic food was difficult to find. It was expensive. And now Aldi has a fantastic selection of organic food at an affordable price. So it's just educating people to know and understand that they should be making better material health decisions with the building materials they're using. And often, those materials are more performant as well. So as we're seeing the most recent Biden infrastructure bill, there were new thresholds set in a lot of places for energy performance and grants and rebates that you could apply for if you build to a higher level of performance in your building practice. So when you talk about costs, if you want to compare HempCrete to what everybody wants to compare it to, which is contemporary modern tract builder homes, yes, it's more expensive, but if you were to use those traditional materials and build to the energy performance standard that you get out of HempCrete, it would be cost comparative. So again, what are we asking for? We don't ask builders for healthy, sustainable, efficient homes. We ask for 5 bedrooms and 4.5 bathrooms and a 3-car garage and granite and marble and all that. But really, it's just, for lack of a better term, it's lipstick on a pig, right? It's not really that much better. So anyway, health of the material, cost of ownership benefit in terms of thermal performance, and then some of the higher level things like the fire resistance, pest resistance, mold resistance, all that.
I heard that it's fire resistant, so you can't burn the stuff.
You can. This is I'm very careful about this.
Right,
there's sort of deal on this. There's sort of hempster myths around HempCrete, and it's not a panacea. It's not a panacea, is what I like to start with.
I mean, I've seen people take flamethrowers to a block of this stuff, and it didn't.
So that said, it does display an extremely high level of fire resistance because you're using a mineral to coat an organic aggregate. So
you're talking about lime.
The lime,
we haven't talked
right?
About just
we won't.
yet.
Yeah, right. But you're coating all of the organic material with lime, and often the frame for the building is buried somewhere either in the middle or to one side or the other of the wall. Encapsulating it. So you really are encapsulating all of the organic material in the wall. Right. And so HempCrete can fail when exposed to fire. Eventually it will carbonate and smolder and fall away. But that takes an incredibly long amount of time, more similar to, stone or concrete construction. But it does not openly ignite. It will not hold a flame. And it does not put off smoke when it ignites. And these are things that from a health and human safety perspective, this is what firefighters are concerned with when you're talking about the fire resistance of a material. So we have not yet done in this country the heavy duty fire under load testing that you would need to establish HempCrete as, let's say, a 1 hour or a 2 hour wall assembly. It has been done in Europe. We know that it could. And in fact, there's one group out in Oregon, Karen Rugg, who did a test on a small lab scale 1 hour fire assembly test. So this is for any of your listeners that might be architects or engineers. Okay. This is what's going to be in their mind when I'm talking about this stuff. And it did pass. So it's a lab scale test, but this is very expensive testing. What we have done on our hempcrete mix, actually it was done by another company, but they were using our binder at that point, is an ASTM E84 flame spread test, and that is the test for an interior wall finish material for its likelihood of lighting another material on fire once it catches on fire. And we scored 0 on a scale of 0 to 450, with 0 being the most performant. So dramatic level of fire resistance. It is way better than most of the materials that you're going to find in a contemporary, American home. Absolutely. So it definitely outperforms there as well. Right. But again, I'm very careful. I don't want people to think that for a fire prone area or for a safety enclosure that you could use hempcrete and you wouldn't burn inside of it. If you didn't burn, the oxygen would be sucked out. So either way, it's not. It's not good.
I think it's important to make sure that we all get reeled in a little bit. Like
right.
You said, the idea of a hamster, and that's me. I'm all.
And I call myself a hamster too. That wasn't a.
We do have to take a look and step back a little bit and that, but the value add, the ability to, have so many things about it that, if nothing else, gives you a whole lot more time to get out of the building.
And a normal house fire, it might not be a total loss.
It's smoke, people suffocate, necessarily, and the smoke isn't there.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of good things about it. Just because it isn't 100% fire resistant all the time.
Right.
We shouldn't overlook,
absolutely not. And from a code enforcement perspective, it's very compelling data to them when you can provide that kind of data. Trust me, it puts them at ease. Yeah. It puts them at ease. But again, we just have to temper everything when we talk about, hemp. I've been very fortunate in the amount of work that I've gotten done. And many of my clients are not what you would consider, a hempster like you and me. They understand the material. They don't have the daily relationship with the plant that some of us do, right. but they get it. And you just have to be, I've found that you get into much more serious and much better conversations with people when you can temper that wild enthusiasm. By the end of the conversation, they're still always saying, okay, what's the catch?
Right.
That's when you say, oh, well, it's the cost, but again, that's education.
So, I from what I'm hearing, there's a couple different ways to go about utilizing hempcrete. There's a cast in place, a spray method, and then a prefab panel. So can you give us a little bit about the different ways to install it? So
the cast in place method is the method that most anybody that's heard of hempcrete has probably seen, either in a book or in an image on the internet. And it involves a pair of slip forms on either side of a frame, usually with the frame in the middle, sometimes to the inside or the outside, but typically in the middle. And those forms create a void into which you're placing the material. So hempcrete is not like concrete in many ways, but very specifically when you're forming concrete, it sounds similar to what we do for hempcrete, but concrete has a slump, right? Concrete will escape a form if it's not buttoned up properly, or if you were to take that form away, the concrete would slump out, right?
Yeah.
Right. So hempcrete is not like that. It's a bit like wet granola. And we cast it. I say casting or placing rather than pouring, because it's not like that. It's not liquid. So we're installing the material with cast in place method. We're putting about 3 or 4 inch layer in the bottom of the wall, distributing it evenly, and then we're using either tools or our hands to tamp that material, right? And typically a little bit tighter against the form than in the middle, because we're trying to have as much entrained air as possible. It's part of the way that hempcrete works thermally, is that there's a matrix of air pockets in there that once they're trapped become really good insulation, just like a double pane window or a greenhouse with 2 layers of plastic. And the difference again between hempcrete and concrete is that once those forms are filled, we can take them off, move them up, overlap them just by about 6 inches maybe on a 2-foot form, and continue the casting. So it's self-supporting.
Like an hour, or
it's self-supporting right away. If it's done properly. Certain binder manufacturers will recommend that you leave form work on for a period of time. The binders that we've used, though, most of which for cast in place are local to Pennsylvania, from Limeworks in Telford, US, is a great resource for people if they don't already know about it. Those binders can withstand it. Now, if you're working in a very narrow, skinny space, you don't want to go up 8 or 10 feet in one day, but over the course of a house, we usually work in a serpentine fashion. You're raising all of the walls evenly so that you don't have vertical day joints. You want horizontal day joints, if anything. So anyway, the cast in place method is great because it's very accessible. All you need is basic carpentry tools and skills to form and pull off a cast in place project. It is very labor intensive though, as you can imagine. Once you get above about chest height on a wall, then there's scaffolding involved. There's buckets. If you're doing a retrofit, you've got a ceiling under which you're trying to pack. So that last form lift you can't put the form up without space, to
have to be able to get in there. Yeah.
So you have to pack it from the front. So anyway, the game changes dramatically once you get up about 6 feet. In addition to that, cast in place, similar to spray applied, there is a curing time on site. Any wet hempcrete installed on site, whether it's sprayed or cast, there's a period of time during which it needs to cure or dry out.
How long?
Cast in place is a bit longer, anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. And with the spray applied, we're good, depending on the weather, 4 to 8 weeks, maybe.
What if it gets wet while it's drying?
It's okay, as long as it's not inundated. It can't be soaked over time. Like if you, on a project, this is the difficult part about doing hempcrete on site, which will lead us to talking about precast methods, is that you're leaving the frame open. They may have a roof structure on, but often we'll tell them to leave the last course of sheathing off so that we can pack over the top if we're doing casts in place. Spray applied, we don't have that problem. But again, you have an open frame on a building and it's exposed for a period of time until you can put the finished plaster on. So you really have to time your schedule right, depending on what part of the country you're in. That means different things. But it's a game, right? And it adds to the project sequence. It can lengthen the project sequence. So again, spray applied is similar to cast in place. We are forming one side of the wall, spraying from the other, and filling that void in a similar fashion. We work from the bottom all the way up, much faster. A cast in place project, let's say, 2,000 square foot home could take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to do by hand. Again, as you can imagine, once you get up in the higher levels and maybe you're on a 30-foot gable end on a wall, how do you get material up there? So with spray application, we can do that same house in about 5 to 8 days. We're much more of a normal contractor arrangement where we're in for about a week and then we're gone and it's done. Spray application limits the amount of labor. It's not any less intense when it's happening, but it limits the amount of labor and the length of time that you have the labor there. We can spray with 4 people. Cast in place, you want a minimum of 5 and as many as 40, as you saw the other day. Many hands make light work. Yeah. Right. And then the precast elements, again, are addressing that drying and curing time on site. So whether they're a pre-frame panel like what we did in the workshop with the hempcrete already installed and cured, or a block like what Drew and Anna are making, again, which people should remember, hempcrete blocks are not necessarily structural. There's companies out there that have added armatures to the inside, the one that looks like a Lego block. There's another company where there's a channel that indexes together into which you pour a concrete post and beam frame. Again, they're not structural, so people have to remember that. But the blocks are great for retrofitting, and actually we've used them on a new build where we had block to the inside, so that they could plaster the inside immediately, and then we actually sprayed from the outside. So you got a bit of the best of all worlds. The best thing about spraying, I will say this, the best thing about either hand casting or spraying on site is that you get what we call a monolithic envelope of insulation around the entire building. It's one piece.
One piece, yeah.
It's one piece. There's no cracks, no separations.
Was that like
no mortar joints?
Housing? Is that,
you can, that comes in? I think hempcrete, for the architects and engineers that are listening, or anyone that's familiar with passive house, hempcrete can dramatically simplify the wall detail, the wall makeup, the layers in the wall. Hempcrete can dramatically simplify that if you are going for passive house, if you must have that air exchange blower door test certification done. We can simplify those layers a bit.
So where are you getting hempcrete? So I think you had said something like a typical house takes a lot of hempcrete, right?
Yep.
And how much hempcrete does it take for a house, and where are you getting it?
Right. So yeah, our hemp currently and our binder, the binder for the spray system is specific to the spray system. We have an agreement in our licensing contract with eReezy, though, that Damien must help me reformulate the binder here, which is great. But that's not something that happens quickly because, again, we're building people's houses. So there's a lot of time and energy and money that we'll be put into testing that before it ever makes it onto someone's house.
Correct.
The herd as well, we're bringing in from France. I will finish by talking about the binders to say that there are good resources in the United States for binders, and even a few companies that have made additive packages so that you're only putting maybe a 7-pound packet into a bag of your local lime for casts in place or for making precast blocks or panels. We do have good American resources for lime binders, even pre-formulated lime binders.
So when you say lime binder, that's like the glue that holds this all together, right? So it's like wipe, and I do have a little bit of this stuff here. So basically that's just a white powder. It's
a lime powder,
like hydrated lime.
So what we have in the United States is hydrated limes. We do not have naturally occurring hydraulic limes like they do in Europe. We have a little bit different of a composition of lime here, but we can take an American hydrated lime and add what we call as a pozzolan to that mix, which allows it to have that hydraulic set. So there are many different mixes that you can make. I would hesitate from telling people to get too creative about it. There's a lot of information out there, but essentially in America, we can make a high calcium hydrated lime with a pozzolan to create a hydraulic lime for hempcrete. And there are ways to do that and resources for that. I'd encourage people to either reach out to me, Limeworks in Telford, PA, or U.S. Heritage Group in Chicago are a couple of good trusted resources with a lot of depth of experience in hempcrete here in the United States. Again, one of those, Limeworks in Telford, is a Pennsylvania company. So definitely a great resource, limeworks.us. But the herd, on the other hand, we're also bringing in from France. And the reason for that is because we chose early on to find the best quality herd that we could use for building. I wanted to eliminate that variable. What it comes down to is the absence of dust and fiber in the mix. Dust is very bad for the set of the lime, and the fiber clogs that matrix of air pockets. So the French herd that we use actually is certified by a third-party professional body in France as appropriate for building houses, which helped me a lot getting houses approved. Before we had the residential building code index, which we now have in the United States. Before we had that, it was very difficult to get projects approved, and to have a certification on the bag, albeit a French certification, disarmed the code enforcement officers
people
quite
love
often.
Guarantees, right? People love guarantees.
Someone somewhere says this is okay for what I'm about to do with it. So anyway, but the other reason why, and this is the larger context of this money that the Department of Ag has put out is for us to find a way to invest in the infrastructure here in Pennsylvania to do and make what we need for all of these things, right? Whether it's microgreens or CBD, fiber, all of that.
Is the issue getting the hemp in the ground, or is it decorticating?
It's decortication. It's the investment in the decortication.
When we say decortication, this is a bowl of hempcrete. So basically, or hemp herd.
Yep.
So you got a stalk. Hemp stalk looks like this or whatever, and then you got to get it to this.
Yep.
Right. So that's where the issue is, right? It's not even so much growing it.
No.
We have the acreage, we have all that. We just don't have the machines.
It's the machines to separate it. And again, the reason why we're bringing in the hemp herd from France is because we need to prime the pump, right? You have to put water in the pump to get the pump to run. And that's how I look at what we're doing. We're bringing that material in, and in doing so, we're able to do the work and we're able to have success doing the projects. We talk with anyone who's doing decortication. I've talked to almost all of the startups in the country. Unfortunately, we don't have many in the Northeast. There's several successful ones in the Midwest that are really getting up and going. But from a carbon perspective, shipping in hemp herd from the Midwest is actually more carbon intensive than bringing it in from France. And this is one that I'm sure people are already forming arguments against me for saying it. But the sea freight voyage from France to Newark, New Jersey for us in the Northeast is very efficient from a carbon perspective. There are 6,000 shipping containers on that same ship, and you divide the diesel fuel by all 6,000 of those. It's actually pretty
when you
light
do it
on
at
carbon.
scale like that.
You do it at scale.
Yeah.
Now, that does not take into account marine strikes, ship strikes on marine life. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that international shipping is the shit. It's not. But again, if you imagine about like a 5.5 hour circle around where we're sitting right now, that hemp herd coming from France spends about 2 hours on a truck in France and about 2 hours here in the United States.
Floating.
And then the rest is all float. So in reality, if you do that map about a 5.5 or 6 hour circle around us in Pennsylvania, any further than that, and it's actually more carbon intensive to bring it from somewhere else. And we're already seeing that. The startups that are starting to produce close to what is, a suitable building grade herd, they've set their price point at just below what it costs for the really good French herd. And more power to them, because with the pandemic and the spike in shipping prices, they're now able to be competitive at a much higher rate per pound than they would have been without the pandemic and the fact that it's so expensive to ship it in from France. So it's really good, actually. They're getting a better start with that, and people's focus on local. Now everybody's focused on local, right? And we should be. But again, this is what this podcast, all the other money that was put out from the Department of Ag, we need decortication. We need decortication in Pennsylvania. We have to have it. But the sobering reality, and I think you have another question here along these lines. The sobering reality is that, each house is about, let's say, 1.5 acres. We're taking a lot of liberties there with like crop yields and, the varieties and all that. But
so each house. So in order to build a house, you need 1.5 acres.
Let's just say it's about 1.5 acres. Yeah, it should be somewhere in that range. Right. Again, depending on your rainfall and all that kind of stuff. But what you'll find is that, we as one of the more successful hempcrete contractors in the country, and mind you, we don't build houses, we just insulate them. That's a key distinction I like to make.
I remember you saying that over the weekend, and I'm like, everybody, yep, that's exactly what he's doing.
Everybody says I built Cameron's a hempcrete builder. No, I'm a hempcrete insulation person, and the people whose houses I've insulated, it's their projects and their designs and their labor of love. So I hate to hear people say that I built this. I did not build these houses. I insulated them. But yeah, again, the question. Okay, so 1.5 acres.
Yeah,
all right. So as one of the more successful hempcrete installers in the country, we've gone through, maybe 200 acres worth of hemp, 300 acres worth of hemp in our whole career.
Okay.
So that puts a very sobering reminder for people that we need more than just hempcrete. And I tell people this often: the specification for the herd for hempcrete is very similar to bedding. And you saw in my warehouse, what do I have in there? I've got horse bedding, I've got chicken bedding, I've got small pet bedding, all from this same company in France. And then we've got the building grade herd. So
what has to do with the size of the pieces, right?
And the cleanliness,
So
the dust and
smaller
fiber.
the piece, the more surface area there's going to be for the line binder to attach to. The larger the piece,
right?
Obviously less. And then of course, the dust. So if there's dust, then glue doesn't
dust will
stick,
interfere.
doesn't
Exactly.
stick
Yep. And then the fiber again will compact those pockets.
So I've been to a decortication center before, and the dust, apparently there's value to the dust.
Right.
There's
plastic compounders. Yep.
Actually suck the dust out and becomes makeup and
all kinds of stuff. So. Yeah. There's a value to the whole plant. But again, the herd, this is a big part of the answer. That decortication system is what separates the fiber from the herd. The fiber then, of course, goes off into woven and non-woven textiles, any number of other things, right? But the herd is 75% of the plant. It's 75% of what you're taking out of the field. So you have to have an answer for that. What do you do with 75% of the stalk? And this is why traditionally hemp was touted as, a wonderful crop for soil usage. You could plant hemp every year. This is what they used to say. Mm-hmm. But the reason why is because they would break the stalks in the field, and they would break off that herd again, which is 75% of the material. Sometimes they would burn it. and it would become great, nutrient, right?
The earth.
Or they just left it to rot in the field. So 75% plus that massive root network that's fixing nutrients from down deep. 75% of the plant was left in the field.
Regenerative farming.
So this is a modern use. This used to be garbage from the hemp production process. So finding ways to monetize this and get it out. Again, if we're only, an acre and a half per house and we do 10, 15 houses a year, you need a decortication facility needs 20 or 30 people in that 4 or 5 hour radius that are doing, operating at the level that I'm at, or they need a couple big contracts. But the big players, Georgia Pacific, the auto manufacturers, all of those folks, they won't touch it until you have demonstrated years of experience and backlog of material for their process so that they won't get shut down. So it's I hate the chicken and egg thing. I'm going to say it. I have to say it.
Right.
It's a chicken and egg, but we're building the hen house too.
Right.
Right. Like we have to build it all, So anyway,
got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And you really do. And I applaud you for, going out there, figuring out a way to do this with all the hurdles and all the obstacles that are in place. The one thing I want to do before, we end here is, I took a little bit of lime, I took a little bit of hemp-hurt, I put it together, and I'm going to add a little bit of water, and we're going to make hemp.
We're going to do it, huh?
But, something very simple is like these little flower pots. We may be using a mold.
Nice.
A little flower pot or whatever. But, the reason I'm doing this is because, I want to show people that, this is how carbon is sequestered.
Yep.
I want to talk a little bit about carbon sequestration
before
we leave. And, we talked about, an acre and a half of hemp is needed per house.
Right.
I did a little bit of, Googling and, tried to put some numbers on it. And an acre and a half per acre is about 10 tons of carbon emissions. So CO2, 10 tons per acre. So an acre and a half would be 15 tons of carbon emissions. So what does 15 tons of carbon emissions look like? So I, again, went to my Google source here and I said, what does 15 tons look like? And they said, well, the average car uses or emits 5 tons of emissions, of CO2 emissions per year.
Right.
So what I felt really good about in this HempCrete workshop is we basically took 3 cars off of the road for a year, by doing that, by using this hemp, this 75% that usually goes back into the ground, by taking it and putting it somewhere else, sequestering it away, not putting that carbon back in. We have made a difference in climate change and,
right.
As far as, our carbon crisis goes. So, for that, it may seem like, why am I doing this? But, I plan on making a little flower pot with this and sequestering some carbon. So, not only did you get to be educated, but, we made the environment a better place, just sitting here today. So that's pretty much all the questions I've got. I want to give you a couple minutes if there's anything else that we didn't cover that you'd like to, make sure people know about, now's the time.
A lot of talk here about the carbon. If you want more specific resources for that, there is the Beam calculator, BEAM.
BEAM.
Yep. For those of you who might be designing a home, or if you're a design professional, it's a tool that allows you to kind of work through what the embodied carbon of the building materials that you're using is on a given project, and they have values in there for almost every common building material and quite a few natural building materials. They now have a value in there for HempCrete. So if you're planning a project, you can take a look at the build. And again, you're looking at operational carbon, you're looking at embodied carbon, the difference being the carbon embodied by the materials versus operational carbon of the building in use. So there's 2 different things when we're talking about, the carbon footprint of a building, but the Beam calculator is for measuring that embodied carbon. So that's a great resource. We actually just did an ASTM R value test formally on the eReasy spray applied method. We're one of the first companies in the United States to do that, and we are actually under pressure from the FTC to do that. I'm not allowed to advertise an R value if I don't have that testing. So what we found was the spray application method, we get about 2.2 per inch of R value. It's similar to cast in place at maybe a 1.6 to 2.0. But the
what is code? Like, what do you need to have?
So in Pennsylvania, an exterior wall is R20. So those panels that we did were 9.25 inch thick. So because at R2 per inch, we're right there. We're right at R20. So anyway, that's really important again for any design professionals. We do talk to the AIA Committee on the Environment here in Philadelphia. So that's definitely a resource to check out. Please feel free to send me emails, ask me questions. You can come visit our shop. Come talk to Dave. Dave actually knows quite a bit about HempCrete now with what he's been through privately and in the workshop. But yeah, this again, I want people to understand that, I don't see this as a panacea for everything, but it does solve quite a few of the issues that we have with the way that we build houses right now. So I really encourage people to look into it more. Again, there's a resource here. Another resource I'll mention is the U.S. Hemp Building Association, ushba.org. Really easy to find. Wonderful organization of, again, design professionals, builders, hemp enthusiasts, students. There's actually a student rate and a Communities of Color scholarship that you can apply for with the USHBA. So
students, is there any schooling or anything that's going on in this stuff as far as
I have
out
been
there in the field?
I've been
I know you're doing educational series, but is there anything?
Not formally, no. I mean, you find the content in bits and bytes through workshops like what we do. We have a very much more serious training for our spray application method. That's 4 days long that people can come and get certified on the eReezy machine. But no, I mean, we've been doing quite a bit of speaking at educational institutions. Thomas Jefferson, we lectured to engineering students last fall. School in Troy, New York. We spoke at Rensselaer Polytechnic, RPI, it always escapes me. Rensselaer Polytechnic, we did a lecture for architecture students. There was a woman from Del Val, professor at Del Val at the workshop that we might go and talk there. So more and more, I'm very open to that. I almost don't ask to be paid for that because I feel like it's more impactful, than talking at NOCO or one of the, big events where, it's a great feel-good exercise, but no one there is arguing that hemp is wonderful, and everybody there understands it. But,
choir.
Getting it in front of architecture and engineering kids at an early age, is really, really good in their careers. So, now they know about it. Right. So, USHBA, Pennsylvania Hemp Industry Council, for those of you here in PA, we're also working on this grant as well for promotion of hemp in Pennsylvania. So you'll see a lot of content coming from that. We do have a membership program, but you can just sign up to be part of the newsletter on the website. We've got a lot of great organizations here in PA, you guys, all together now. Pennsylvania Hemp Industry Council, National Hemp Association, all right here in PA, all very focused on hemp. Transition Town.
It was amazing. There was like 50 people at this workshop. And,
yep.
Lots of them from PA, but also, I was surprised. I think there was like 7 or 8 different states.
Yep.
Yeah. It was Vermont, Louisiana, Virginia, like they were all over the place. So it was really cool. I know it's kind of novel, building houses with weed,
Right. Hey now.
But, I think the more we bring this industrial hemp coalition together with, the traditional, cannabis culture, and, the more we break down these stigmas, the more we get out in people's faces, the more we show this stuff. It's a goofy little podcast talking about building hemp houses and stuff.
It's very important.
But 5
very
years
important
from now,
yeah.
I think we're going to be it's going to be a different conversation.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate you, Cameron, coming out and sharing all of your knowledge and
Cheers,
all of your
man.
expertise with me.
Yep.
And once again, CMP Radio, thank you very much for all you do. The Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, thank you for your support in all this. And thank you to Transition Town, Greater Media, for giving the Hemp Study Group the opportunity to do things like this to help promote the hemp plant.